It is 8 o'clock on a Sunday night. Very soon, just bear this in mind, we'll be moving to 7 o'clock from next week. But now it's that time of the evening where we engage with you on matters that affect you, matters that affect your family, matters that affect your community. Tonight, the Democratic Alliance in sharp focus. Why? Well, that party is topical. A very good evening to you, South African, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. Lucia, our digital audience, please. They will pop up on your screen in a short while. Good to have them on the program. And as I say every week, digital audience, please put up your virtual hand if you have any comments, if you have any questions for our guests. I'll do my very best to get you on air. The Democratic Alliance Federal Congress, done and dusted. The person to take forward that party, John Steenhuisen, re-elected and giving, I guess, us a window into the direction the party has taken. He announced that the DA will be initiating a process to form a pre-election moonshot pact with like-minded political parties, civic movements, and civil society organizations. What this means, according to Steenhuisen, by the way, is that the moonshot pact must work together to reach a mark of 51% so that they can, well, they say they want to defeat the ANC and keep the EFF out, who, by the way, was declared by Steenhuisen as the political enemy #1 of the DA. That's the DA's aim. Just how ambitious is this moonshot pact? And is it even worth pursuing, given the political state of play? We will discuss. We also have our producer, Mark Ketlemotlebe, live for us. He's standing by in Vrededorp with the residents there to get reaction. It's good to have him on the program. It's good to have their voices on the program. Very important. Mark, stand by. We'll come to you in a short while, which leads us to the question of the week. And we're asking you, what do you make of the new leadership of the Democratic Alliance's Federal Congress? Let us know at It's Topical SABC. Come, follow me. Let's get you some context. With regards to the DA's anchor tenants, their base, the question is there room or space to expand their base? Let us know what you think about this. We were going to get your perspective in a short while at It's Topical SABC. All right, let's give you a sense of what we know and why it matters. And for that, we turn to the magic wall to give you some context with regards to our discussion tonight. And this is where the DA fits in, right, between the ANC and the EFF. And we heard John Steenhuisen saying that they want to prevent an ANC-EFF coalition, calling it a doomsday coalition. And as I said earlier, publicly declaring Julius Malema's EFF to be the political enemy #1 of the Democratic Alliance, in his words, John Steenhuisen's words. But the question is, would they work with the ANC, given the choice? We will soon find out. What about the various leaders over the years popping up on your screen? Tony Leon leading the pack. You'll remember back in 2000, the Democratic Party reached a merger agreement with the Federal Alliance and the new National Party, and the DA is formed. Helen Zille gets another term as Federal Counsel. We have Muzi Maimane as well as John Steenhuisen, present leader. Now, with regards to the electoral performance over the years, very important to note this, and very important to give you context in terms of how we're going to move forward with regards to what the DA says, right? In an interview, which it reminds me of the interview that our political editor, Mzondile Mbeje, had with John Steenhuisen, where Steenhuisen said that he inherited a party that was in a terrible state in 2019, right? And you see what the figure of 2019 is. There you go. 20.77, and it is down from 22%, right? And he said, due to teamwork, they managed to pull it together to a point where the polling now shows that they are within 12 percentage points in some instances behind the ANC in some polling, right? So if that is the case, what has the party done differently to attract voters? The party did an internal review, we told them. Some of the findings: policy incoherence. Nobody understood where the DA stood on key issues. There was disunity within the party, infighting and leaking to the media, etc. John Steenhuisen did explain this during that interview with Mr. Mbete. So the party suggests lessons have been learnt, right? But something that also jumped out at me when federal leader, contender that is, Dr. Mpho Phalatse spoke, and she said that between 2016 and the 2021 local government elections, the DA lost more than 1.4 million votes, and a total of, she said, 285 councillors lost their positions as elected public reps in communities. She also spoke about the stark choice of trying to consolidate the base, right? And I guess accept what she says was the projected 16% of the vote share in 2024. Or the choice that she gave was vote for real growth in this Congress. You know, the Congress went the other way with John Steenhuisen. By how much of a margin? We will ask the questions in a short while. How do we marry the two statements? We will find out. Let's get you a sense of who the leader is, the re-elected leader, John Steenhuisen. We know that he was elected leader of the DA back in November 2020, the interim federal leader in November, let me get back to that and get you that again. He was born in 1976 in Durban, which makes him around 47 years old. Chief Whip of official opposition in May 2014 to October 2019. A member of the National Assembly in 2021, 2011. Elected councillor in Durban at the tender age of 22, and served as the party's caucus leader in KZN. So what this tells us is that he served in various spheres of government. What does that say with regards to his future? Remember, he has never led the party in terms of national elections. Does he have what it takes to attract, or as I said earlier on, expand that base that the DA currently has? We will discuss with the better minds in a short while. Context, always important. Why it matters, perspective coming up. Now, with regards to, we're going to go to Market Kettler in a short while. I want to get you to our very popular segment called Word on the Street feature. And we went to Parkhurst in Johannesburg to gather the views of who people believed should have been elected between the two DA candidates. And we also asked you what qualities the leader of the official opposition should possess. This is what you had to say. Take a look.
Dear members of the DA, I must be honest with you. I like Cyril Ramaphosa and I trust him, but I've got a major problem that the ANC needs competition. Like the rest of the world, you at least need two parties that can compete.
I think I'm going to vote for John Steenhuisen, did what the man brings.
The DA is the only party I think that is going to help us to make South Africa a better place, and I feel they must select a leader that's strong and for South Africa. And I'm originally from Cape Town, and I've seen the difference that they make in Cape Town.
What this country needs is good and honest leadership. People need to stop stealing. People need to start fixing things. What the current government's been doing is stealing the money, and it's a terrible thing. So let's hope that the DA leadership race ends with a leader that can actually lead the country and put the money to good use.
I'm firmly backing the DA, and I'll vote for anyone who just fixes the potholes. I'm running with Steenhuisen.
South Africa just needs change in terms of their leaders. So if we have a female leader, maybe it's going to give us a different perspective, as we've seen that the males have tried, and they're doing their thing, but we prefer change is good. Any change is good, and change is inevitable. So hopefully Mpho wins and she brings about change.
Umpopalazi wena olibona ukuthi ungaba nalo wena ungaba nayo umsebenzi omkhulu lapho ku-DA.
I think you people should give Steenhuisen a chance because we already saw the movement about his leadership. To Mpopalazi, I like her, but so sorry. We gave her a chance, but we didn't see any movement.
All right, look, it's actually crucial to hear what the voters have to say about the latest political developments in the country, and that's our duty here at It's Topical, to give you a platform to air your views. For that now, to take this forward, we now cross to our producer, Maki Ketumotlabe. He's standing by in Vrededorp. This is where our Google Maps show us Maki is, in Vrededorp. He has the sentiment on the ground. Maki, what are people saying?
Evening to you, Blaine. Yes, indeed, we are live here in Vrededorp, just on the outskirts of Johannesburg, where you find some of the residents in party regalia, specifically DA regalia. And here they are. Of course, they were actually watching the proceedings of the DA Federal Congress since Saturday, up until today, when John Steenhuisen was re-elected party leader, of course, going into 2024 election. But let's get reaction from them. Fatima, you are one of the elderly citizens here. Talk to us. What is your reaction to John Steenhuisen being re-elected party leader, DA leader?
Very happy for him, and he can do it. He can delegate. I love him.
What do you like about him?
I like everything, very friendly, everything, whenever together. He's always the man.
Yeah.
I love him all the time. I love DA.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you expect from him specifically going into 2024 election? What would you love for him to do?
I'd like him to take over Johannesburg. That is what we want. We want change. We've been getting changes from DA in Cape Town. We want it in Johannesburg.
Quite interesting, because it was called two-horse race, and obviously you bring into picture Mpopalazi, former mayor of Johannesburg, Agnes. Mpopalazi ga wina nko re tlhalosetse gore wena o ikutlwa bjang?
Ga ke ikutlwe sentle because o na re solofeditse dilo tse dingata gore o tla tsamaisana le rona tsele tele, mara ga ka dira yalo o re phoqile mo nakong e khutshwane.
So you're talking about the fact that she promised you a lot of things, but when she then became mayor, she did not deliver on those things. Could you just mention some of those things?
O na re solofeditse gore o tlo change Johannesburg ke metlakase metsi dio tse tsotlhe tse re di tlhokang, mara ga ka dira yalo gogile maoto.
So she dragged her feet once she actually was in that position of Johannesburg mayor. Alex, John Steenhuisen's speech, talk to us. What stood out for you there?
Well, the unification of the party. Ultimately, since the 2021 elections, he had become leader, and he actually brought this party to where we are. We have consolidated, and as Agnes has said, we were not able to deliver in most places. Why? Because of coalition governments. And obviously what was happening in Johannesburg, because if you look at it, most recently, EFF refused to vote with us when we asked for the loan, yet as soon as the ANC incentivized them to be part of the government, the loan came through, and that's why delivery was hampered in the city of Johannesburg.
Now, DA enemy number one, that is Malema and EFF. That's what he said, John Steenhuisen. What is your take on that?
Well, I wouldn't call them enemy number one. The enemy number one in South Africa at the moment is the Democratic Alliance, because everybody wants us not to be the government. And they're scared of our growth. They're scared that we are delivering where we are. If you look at South Africa, the Western Cape is the best run province in the country. The top 5 municipalities in the country are all DA led. In Gauteng, the best municipalities, Midvar, Democratic Alliance again. So we are the ones that they are trying to bring down.
Noma, Steenhuisen talking about 2024 vision for DA, that is to defeat the ANC and to keep the EFF out. What is your take?
Mr. John Steenhuisen, that man is a bold man. That man can take the bull by its horn. I think Mr. John is going to do that because of, if you can check to Cape Town where DA is doing very well at Cape Town, but the people there are comparing Cape Town, the suburbs and the location. The problem is at Cape Town where DA is delivering. Then at the locations you can check, people are voting for ANC. So it's a coalition government there. So the DA can't go all it out at the places of locations because of there is ANC there. So the ANC is is disturbing them there.
Yeah.
So now, if we are checking, we as people, we like to compare that. But now, if you can go to Cape Town is like another place that is not in South Africa. Cape Town is not like Johannesburg. Cape Town is not like Pretoria. But now, as people, we like to compare that. I think the A is going to do it at 2024. I wish the A can win in 2024. That can show the people, can show ANC miracles can build this country.
Roger, let's just wrap it up with you. What are your hopes in the DA? And of course, Steenhuisen being re-elected now.
Yeah, I've got very high hopes because John is a very capable person in terms of, he have got too much strength. You can see he was running around from our 2021 elections. He was with us. So I think John Steenhuisen is the one that is going to take us to 2024. And come 2024, John Steenhuisen is going to be the president of South Africa. And I'm telling you now, if each and every party that was that is in parliament, like EFF and Action SA, were with us, we were going to take South Africa into led by DA. But the only problem is that there's people in like EFF who doesn't know what they want. Today they talk something, tomorrow they say something again. Yesterday they were saying they're gonna die for Zuma. Now they're not dying for Zuma. They don't gonna work with ANC, but now they're working with ANC. So which means they don't know where they're standing. In actual fact, all those people that gonna still vote for those people, especially EFF, I don't know what they're thinking. To me, it looks like it's just a bunch of people that just are vagrants that are trying to disturb everything. Because even in parliament, if you try to talk in parliament, they try to do the right thing, they just disturb. How can you have a mandate as a leader? You come and tell people to say, this is what I'm going to do, let's go to parliament, and then we disturb the parliament. Are you going to be a parliament in that, a leading part in that way? So, to me, as much as I'm concerned, I'm just full. I need to empty everything that I have. In terms of DA with John Steenhuisen, come 2024, John Steenhuisen is going to be the leader of South Africa. In the last time when we were in apartheid, we had jobs. Our forefathers had jobs, have got everything. At the present moment, we don't have jobs. Bring the white guy, let him put him in power, everything gonna be sorted out in South Africa.
Yes, we want it.
Interesting thoughts, Blaine. But before I take it back to you, on a very lighter note, I mean, some of them, of course, you had them saying that they were impressed by his speech, but there's one resident here who doesn't seem to be quite impressed by just one element about John Steenhuisen. And she's right there, and she says his dancing skills were not up to scratch. let's just get to see what she think John Steenhuisen should have actually displayed on the stage, as we will soon take it back to studio.
Gloria Estefan warned us. That's what happens when the rhythm gets you. Mark Ketlamotlabe live for us there. Thank you very much indeed. I guess the big question is, will the DA, will John Steenhuisen be dancing his way all the way to the union buildings? Let's take it to the better minds. We joined in studio by Solly Malatsi, just elected second Deputy Federal Chairperson, as well as Dr. Hlengiwe Ndlovu, Senior Lecturer at Wits School of Governance. Good to have both of you on the program. As you can see, our digital audience packed, as always, as well as Cilliers Brink. He is the DA Gauteng North Region Chairperson, also Mayor of Tshwane. We'll pick his brain in a short while. Good to have all of you on this day where we find out that John has been re-elected as the leader to take the party forward. Solly, congratulations, first of all, on being elected second Deputy Federal Chair. When you look at the composition of this new leadership, do you have faith in it to take the party to that next level?
Thanks very much. Absolutely. If you look at the gathering itself, it's the largest Congress that the DA has had in terms of size. 2,000 delegates coming together for this Federal Congress, and they have expressed their preference in terms of who should lead the party, particularly going towards an important milestone in the country's democracy, which is the 2024 election. And they've chosen the leaders that they believe have what it takes to take the DA towards that election and beyond.
Do you think you can work with those who have been named, who have been elected?
Absolutely. What unites all of us is that we are DA members first and foremost, and we are in the same political party, and that we exist within the same space. And the mere fact that we ran together, even including those who may not have gathered sufficient votes to be elected in this position, is that we are aligned by the values. That's why we find ourselves in the same political party. And it's very important for us that we continue on this period of stability that we currently on. This is the first Congress that we have had since John was first elected, and it's our second one since the 2019 elections, which was a major setback for us. And we are now in the process where we're trying to regain some of those impact that we lost in that direction. And this is why John got a renewed mandate from the DA delegates and the DA members at large, because they believe that there's been a period of positive stability in the party, and that it is all fair that he gets given another 3 years to continue with that vision. Speaking
about that mandate, I want to understand what mandate he actually got. What was the margin that he won by with regards to Mpopelatse?
Well, you know, I wouldn't want to get into the figures, because it's an internal election. We've never done that before. But I know that this is what most people are interested in. It was a resounding victory for John Steenhuisen. Over 83% of delegates chose John Steenhuisen as the leader of the Democratic Alliance, and that is a massive endorsement for anyone who gets elected into that position.
Over 83%. Hlengiwe, I'm going to come back to you in a short while. I just wanted to get Cilliers' take with regards to what took place today, the election, overwhelming, says Solly Malatsi. Something that John mentioned as well is the Moonshot Pact, right? And I guess the pushback you'll get from some people is that, look, if you're battling to hold together coalition in Tshwane, how on earth are you going to get all these parties, like-minded parties, together and vie for top position at union buildings?
Well, let me just congratulate my friend and fellow Democrat Solly Malatsi on his election as Deputy Federal Chairperson. Both him and I come from Limpopo, and we've got many other things in common. So that's great, and I think he's going to be a great addition to the leadership of the party. We simply have no other choice but try to make successive coalitions. We are living in the end times of ANC one-party dominance. The ANC has failed this country. It has captured state institutions. It has sponsored cadre deployment corruption. It has failed us, and it's directly responsible for the crisis that we have with Eskom. So there has to be a replacement to the ANC, but we know that there isn't one other dominant party that is going to replace the ANC. And so even as a young democracy, of course we're going to make mistakes. Of course there's going to be false starts. But I think what we've demonstrated in Tshwane is, despite this tremendous fight back from the ANC, despite the new coalition between the ANC and the EFF in Gauteng, sponsored by Panyaza Lesufi, we've been able to come together, the 5 parties in the coalition, overcome our challenges, and we are back in government to fix what was broken and perhaps to give some hope as to the future of coalitions in this country.
Well, let's talk a bit about that. And John Steenhuisen did acknowledge in an interview with the SABC that you can't go it alone in terms of bringing the ANC below 50%. You require other parties, he says. The criticism, Cilliers, is that the pushback that some say that the DA doesn't compromise. They won't compromise in a coalition. Having said that, how do you achieve that goal of bringing parties, like-minded parties together, or civil society, civic movements, if you take that stance?
But I don't think it's true that the DA doesn't compromise. I think what the DA has insisted on in the past is that the parties who sign a coalition agreement, in fact, stick to that coalition agreement. And that's not just in our own interest, that is in the interest of stable government. If we constantly have to renegotiate positions and renegotiate the so-called balance of power, that's when coalitions tend to fail. That's when the ANC comes and drives a wedge between the parties in a coalition. But of course, the DA has made mistakes. We're not perfect. We're just human beings, honest, hardworking South Africans, sincerely trying to make things work, sincerely trying to replicate the successes that we've had in Cape Town and Midvaal in places where we don't have an absolute majority. As I mentioned, this is a young democracy. Coalitions are in fairly early stages. We're not Europe, where we've got decades and a century even of coalitions. We have to figure this thing out as we go along. But I think what is very important is that the parties who are in a coalition must have some sort of a coherence, some sort of a unity of purpose. It doesn't help just cooperating with parties only to bring down the ANC, but without figuring out what unites us in terms of policy and a program of action. That is very, very important.
Dr. Ndlovu, John Steenhuisen also mentioned that the party support base can be looked at roughly in thirds. 1/3 white, 1/3 black, 1/3 Indian colored. Having said that, do you think that he has the ability to attract the majority of South Africans in order to get them to that goal, ultimate goal?
Yes, I mean, there is a lot of work to be done from Midrand today as they come out of the Congress. They have a lot of ground to cover, and some of those sentiments, we had them, they were echoed by Mpho yesterday when she said, when she's coming here, when she tabled a speech, and then she noted that she needs to work with communities, right, at the margins. And we know that the majority of South Africans are living at the margins of society. So that has got implications also in terms of the speech that John Steenhuisen said today, just before the announcement of the results, when he said, I came here, the DA was a mess. And then, so as someone who's sitting, by the side and trying to understand that statement in terms of what does it mean to say that DA was a mess, and it's a fact that it was coming from a black leader who's Miss Maimane, who just exited, and then also expressed his, discontent and other issues that they've battled with within the party. So they do have a lot of work, to cover, a lot of ground to cover, especially if they are going to the union building. They need numbers. Because I think we've seen, if they have alluded to the struggles around running coalition government within the municipalities. They need the majority of numbers to make decisions and to get the votes, to get some of the most important resolutions to be passed. So as they are going to the union buildings, they do need numbers of their own, but also to win the majority on the ground. And the majority of South Africans are black and poor. And the question that you're asking, are they positioned to galvanize that vote, is something else that we still need to reflect on.
Well, then the question is, was it a smart move to alienate the EFF and call it political enemy number one?
Well, I think it was a smart move on one hand because the DA is clear, I mean, in terms of their ideological orientation. They did talk about what we've just, the issue that you raised, to say they do not compromise. It's not something that's written somewhere or the criticism. They said it. Steenhuisen articulated it this morning when he said we're not going to compromise our values,
that can be seen as a strength.
Yes. So that has got implications in terms of who are the stakeholders within the DA.
Right.
How is their relationship with the politics of the EFF? So that becomes very important when they are, to gain support and all of that.
Right.
But also the question is, when you are looking at unseating the ANC and you're not going to work with the EFF, who's also a majority in terms of the opposition bench, who are you going to work with? Are you going to work with opposition parties like the situation we find ourselves in right now? You have someone who was voted by less than 3% population, in Gauteng, and then they are taking a mayoral city and all of those issues. So those questions are really critical for them to reflect on them if they are, to go to the union building.
All right, so digital audience, hands are lighting up, going up thick and fast. Let's go to Cassidy first, and then Anissa. Cassidy, to you first.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. No, I want to agree with Cilliers when he said that we are where we are because of the ANC. And if the ANC is honest, the fact that we are even able to speak about them getting less than 50% next year, it's literally at their feet. They have made it possible for an opposition party such as the DA to now be in a position to even speak about being a governing party next year in coalition with other smaller parties. And it's so sad because they are literally becoming a stereotyped failed liberation party, just like so many other parties in Africa. And there's so much word about the racial demographics of the leadership of the new leadership of the DA. But we have seen in sport that the quota system does not work. We have seen with BEE that the quota system does not work. We have seen in our failed state entities that just putting somebody there because they are black does not work. So the DA has the urban vote, and urban voters are waking up and they are seeing past color, and they are seeing that the DA is a party that makes things happen and does not steal their money. So it's good that we are now progressing there as voters to look past color.
All right, Anissa, you, and then Marzel. Anissa first. If you can unmute, there we go. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for having me, and a very good evening to your viewers. I wanted to actually come in there when the Mayor Cilliers was talking. But firstly, let me congratulate him for being imported from Parliament and parachuted to Tshwane as the Mayor. And also let me thank Solly for being the only black representative amongst that arrangement. But I wanted to touch on the fact that the Mayor of Tshwane actually mentions that coalitions are something new to South Africa. Unfortunately, this then proves that the DA has not done their homeworks. Coalitions is nothing new to South Africa, and I think if we have to look back at the ANC, the ANC will be able to show us that even post-1994, the ANC came into government with what is called the government of national unity, and that in itself was a coalition. What is new, rather, or what they were trying to say, is that it is coalitions within minorities, and minorities now finding expressions, which is what the DA is not advocating for, forgetting that itself started as a minority, and in fact, as it stands, it is a minority itself, having received 20% of the votes. And also, let's not forget that the DA was rejected by South Africans. Your statistics did show that in 2019 they sat at 22%, and it fell down to 20%. That is just my submission for now.
All right, Anissa. Marzel, and then Zanelli. Marzel, if you can unmute. There you go.
Hello, yes. Thank you so much for having me. So I want to speak a little bit about the coalition governments.
Yeah.
So I think post-1993, there was a reason why we adopted a system of proportional representation. Because if you look at our system, it basically calls for coalition government. And it's actually abnormal for like one party dominance. So I know there's a lot of worry about that, but I think it's a positive thing. I especially think it's a positive thing that the DA is now open to join efforts with other parties like ACDP or Action SA to form like a rainbow coalition. Because in the past, I feel like the DA pushed this narrative of you need to vote for the DA because it's the only party big enough to defeat the ANC. However, a lot of the DA's policies, especially policies on post-race or merit-based system, alienates a lot of South Africans because unfortunately, a lot of our lives are still structured across the racial lines. So I don't think we're at a place to be post-race. So I think this gives voters options to vote for parties that they align with. And they might now have feelings of more political efficacy because their vote actually does count because of this like new talk about coalition governments. So in my opinion, it's a very positive thing.
All right, so let's take it to Zanelisiwe before we get to a break.
Good evening to all the viewers. My question or interest is on I think it was mentioned by the current spokesperson where he spoke about not being able to disclose the number of votes and the actual margins that happened today with John Steenhuisen being elected. I think that speaks a lot into the actual reason for elections and whether the elections are actually prepared. Because why are the results not being able to be shared with the general public? These are, I believe, statistics that we should have access to, we should be able to analyze, or in fact, even within the DA party themselves.
But he did say that over 80%, over 80% of the delegates voted for John, yeah?
Yeah,
it's overwhelming mandate, I guess.
However, how can we get the general scope of everything, and that be disclosed to the public? Because it speaks to the process of elections. Why are the results not being used so that people can access? And also, just to touch on Anita's point, on the fact that in 2019 we saw that the DA was rejected by Black people, considering the vote of 20%. And speaking to the fact that the majority of the population currently are Black people. So it is in fact impossible to sit and say we are post-race, we are looking past race, because majority of South African people are Black, they're poor. So how then does the DA speak to that? How are we speaking to that if we want to remove things such as the PPE? How do we speak to that? So those are just some of my things.
Okay. Nobuhle, Nicholas, Spiwe, Nigel, I see your hands are going to come back in a short while. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to get Solly to answer a few questions as well. Race, what sort of part or impact would it have in the 2024 elections, especially for the Democratic Alliance? More next. All right, welcome back. We are talking about the Democratic Alliance. Its re-elected leader, John Steenhuisen, planning to take the party further in 2024. How much further? That's the question. Let's bring in Solly as well as our digital audience. And Cilliers, Dr. Ndlovu with us as well. With regards to, John Steenhuisen mentioned that he inherited the party in a terrible state, 2019. The departure of Mmusi Maimane, there's been others. Many black leaders included. And I know, understood that people move in and out of political parties, understood. But at what point does a political party take responsibility for departures?
Look, I think there's a point that we need to make very clear from the onset. If the DA as an institution was not as solid as some wanted to paint to be, it would not have survived, it would have collapsed. And I think many political analysts were premature in using the basis of the 2019 elections as a prediction somehow for the DA to be in a free fall. The reality is that to this day, statistically, the DA is still the second largest political party in South Africa. Not many parties can survive having its leader leave the job and the party chairperson because of a bad election. And the reality is, in recognizing that, there's been efforts that the DA has made in order to stabilize the internal spirit within the party. And that led with us moving towards an interim Congress where John Steenhuisen was elected as leader. And just to make this point, because there's a lot of inference being made, the reality is that on the back of what has happened since John Steenhuisen took over, there's been some gradual growth that the DA has been able to recover in comparison to the electoral performance that we had. And it takes only the leadership of, the membership of the party to express its confidence through their leaders by voting for them. This is the largest Congress the DA has ever had in his history. And for that leader to be returned with the size of the victory that he did is an indication that there are right things that he's doing. And of course, these things takes time. We are under no illusion. That is why we recognize that the future of governance in South Africa is going to be through a coalition. If you look over the developments that has happened since 2019, 2021 elections, and what is happening in local councils, the future is literally two coalitions. One is a coalition of the opposition that will be led by the DA as the largest opposition party amongst those, and the other option is a coalition that will be led by the ANC with the support of the ENF, as it has been able to deliver them in government in Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg, and through their stillborn attempts in Tshwane.
Let's bring in Nicholas Nyati, DA Youth Federal Leader. Nicholas, good to have you on the program. When you look at the new crop of leaders, some old, some getting another term, and you marry it with what Steenhuisen was saying about the 1/3 white, black, Indian, colored, is it an accurate reflection of your support base? Are you happy?
The DA is the biggest political party in urban areas, and that is something that South Africa has to pay attention to. It means a lot, because if you look at urban areas, it's mostly your professionals, it's mostly your property owners. And what John has done today was to actually draw a line in the sand to say our enemy number one is the EFF, and this is based on our ideological differences. The EFF believes that no one in South Africa should own land or should own any property, and the DA believes that people should own their own land and should own their own property. But to answer your question, I think what John was saying is that we've got a chance not only to remove the ANC from government, but to actually save the lives of South Africans, especially young people.
But surely, Nicholas, surely what would give you more of a chance is, you mentioned urban areas. What about the rural areas? In order to get a chance to move up to the union buildings, you need to factor that in with regards to those people as part of your calculus. Why is it not happening?
To feed off what Solly was saying, that the trajectory of the DA under John Steenhuisen has been positive. We've won in Takastad in the Eastern Cape. No one thought we would ever win a ward in Takastad. We won Ward 18, where we grew by over 500%. This was not only just in that ward, we won in Jamestown, another ward there where we also drew by 500%. We won a ward from the ANC in Mpumalanga. So the whole of South Africa, whether in rural, whether in urban areas, they are feeling the change. And what we've done, and what John spoke about, was the moonshot election. Moonshot election means that we are prepared to work with other opposition parties that believe in freedom, that believe in individualism, and that believe in a diverse country. Parties like the IFP, you see what we're doing in KZN, and that will assist South Africans. So we drew a line in the sand today with the election of John to say anyone who is against what the currently is happening in government, come and join the DA under the leadership of John Steenhuisen. And anyone who's supporting what is happening, people like the EFF, you can side with the ANC. But as the DA, we're on the side of South Africans, and we urge each and every individual to come and join us to take the fight back to this government. And we urge the media, people like yourself, that let us rather change the narrative of politics, where we look at whether the cat is black or the cat is white. But let us rather judge, can the cat actually catch the mice? And in this case, John has been catching mice, and that is why majority of delegates in the DA voted for him.
Look, the cat's none of our concern. We will reflect whatever we see and mirror society. That's our job. But point taken, Nicholas. Nigel, let's take you and then Nobuhle.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with a lot of the sentiments that were shared earlier.
but specifically regarding that there needs to be a significant amount of work done in order for the DA actually to be successful in the upcoming elections. Predominantly because it is important for a party to be contextually relevant to the people that it is representing. And the results today are, there are good results in terms of there was a landslide victory for John Steenhuisen, but it's also important to understand how the general public might perceive those results. And especially the point raised earlier, how the DA is significantly able to draw the urban vote, but they do, in some instances, do not as well in rural areas. And the upcoming election is very important for them to appeal to those people. And it's quite a lot of work needs to be done. So I do also agree that a coalition is needed so that they can get to the people that might be skeptical, because it is obviously important for a party that is elected to be reflective of the general population. And if the people in the country, the majority of the people that are in the country are black and they're poor, it is significantly more difficult for them to appeal to those votes. So I'm not underestimating that there might be a significant improvement in terms of the voting that we might get, but it is quite a lot of work needs to be done to be able to draw that particular vote. This is my perspective.
Nice, thank you very much indeed, Nobuhle. Then Spiwe. Did we lose? There we go. Go ahead, Ms. Dube. Oops, it seems that we lost it. Let's go to Spiwe. Mabaso.
Thank you very much, Blaine. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, sir.
You know, it's a bit disappointing to hear the youth leader of the DA saying things that were not said by John Steenhuisen. Because if you listen to John Steenhuisen's speech, it was EFF, ANC, EFF, Onyoboli, Julius Malema. That's all we heard from him. We didn't hear that our main problem that we are facing now is load shedding. Our main problem that we are facing now is the ANC. He didn't mention anything about Palapala. The only time he mentioned Cyril was when he was speaking against what the ANC is doing. And also, I'd like to understand this newfound idea of not compromising. Why is it not carried through to PA, for an example, which is led by convicted criminals? So if the DA has got these new values, which, by the way, we must question because the DA was being given metros by the EFF, and we didn't hear of those so-called new values that are found now. And also, we must ask ourselves, is the position of an opposition to oppose another opposition, or is it to hold the current government accountable?
Yeah, important point. Nicholas, let's get you to respond to that.
Look, I think I don't want to say we have selective hearing, but if you listen to John's speech, he spoke about the DA being an alternative to South Africans. And in that alternative, John quoted what we've done in Western Cape when it comes to load shedding. He spoke about what we plan to do for South Africa when it comes to load shedding, not just load shedding, but youth unemployment, railway transport. But what I want to challenge colleagues to do, the conference is still available online. Go to the resolutions that were passed in this Congress, because I think the mistake that we do as individuals, particularly citizens of South Africa, is to only look at the election results, but not at the ideas and resolutions and amendments that are actually discussed in a Congress. So I think what you are asking for, my brother, is what does the DA plan to do for South Africa? And your answer is in those resolutions that were passed today. Most of those resolutions are very progressive and will impact the government that the DA will make when we enter. To answer your question about the EFF and PA, EFF voted for us without us asking them. We never went to negotiate with the EFF to put us in power. That is why that when we did not give them their selfish demands, they were able to sell the residents of Joburg, they were able to sell the residents of Ekurhuleni, and are prepared to sell out the residents of Nelson Mandela Bay back to the ANC. So actually, a vote for the ANC, for the EFF, is a vote for the ANC. And as the DA was saying, this current national government of ANC is failing us. We cannot then in the same breath unite with the ANC, which is we are with the EFF, which is necessarily an ANC light. So our principles have always been the same. Nothing has changed. But what we'll never do is to compromise on freedom, fairness, and opportunity for all, just to get Nicholas Nyati to become a mayor. And that is what South Africa needs.
I'm going to just, if I have time, hopefully we don't run out of time, I'm going to get Cilliers to respond to some of the issues with regards to the challenges that the mayor is going to be facing in Tshwane. Dlamini, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I think there's been a lot of talk on the DA being the largest party in the urban areas, but there's been, I think Mr. Sila can also answer to this, is what have they been able to do as the largest party in these urban areas, right? If we look at the Guruleni that faced a lot of failures in the 16 months that we had a DA mayor in power, we didn't see a lot of change. In Johannesburg, we've seen another failure. The main example has been the Western Cape, but everyone has ignored the results of the Auditor General of how it has failed under the DA more than it failed under the ANC. And in John's speech, he spoke a lot about the EFF, but not on its resolutions. How do they plan to achieve all these resolutions besides the moonshot plan? What other plans exist?
I'll take that to Solly in a short while. In Tatuwa, let's get your take, if you can unmute.
Yes. For me, DA is very, as Mr. Mawasa said, they have other political parties at the center of their election campaigns generally. We need to hear what DA will do for South Africans in general. We want to hear their policies and everything. They cannot just declare that they have enemy number one, the EFF is their enemy number one. We want to know DA. And it has been doing this for decades, where they don't actually talk about themselves, they don't talk about the things they're willing to do. They just put ANC at the center of their campaign. Now they're putting EFF at the center of their campaign. They are just people against EFF generally, which is a bit problematic. And also, we cannot, I think they've been avoiding the race issues in South Africa in general. You cannot avoid that, especially in this economy, in this economic situation, where majority of people are excluded in general. So you cannot run a campaign. You need to be in touch with people in South Africa. And I don't think DA is in touch with the needs of South African people in general.
Dr. Ndlovu, do you think the DA is still far too reactive to parties like the ANC?
Well, I think there still are. Given some of the sentiments that are coming from online and what we've read, I mean, from the speeches, I mean, it's just a position of this is what the DA is going to do, this is what the DA has done. And I share the same to say, what is it that you're going to do? So you've got all these good resolutions that you're putting. How are you going to achieve them? We're yet to see that. But most importantly, I mean, the issue of race and the issue of class, because the issue of class runs through their achievements that they're talking about. If you look at Midvaal, if you look at Cape Town, where in Cape Town is the progress? Are the people in Khayelitsha claiming the same? Are the people in, the marginalized areas claiming the same in terms of this is how far we've come since the DA took over, our lives are better. And it's important because South Africa is a historical country. It's got a very complex history. It has gone through a series of historical moments, but not seeing them reflected there in terms of their policies and everything is very interesting. But also what I liked this afternoon when Steenhuisen spoke about his earlier speech as well. So he spoke about not compromising, number one, we've covered that, but also he spoke about a lot of things around, in that not compromising, right? They spoke about cadre deployment and all of that, and we saw the backlash that came after Dr. Mpho said, I'm a medical doctor. And then we also had the other Solim Simang. Is it the right name? Can't remember. Yes. So he was asked at SAFM, do you think education is important? Right. So that's another issue, but also the issue of gender. I'm not seeing how they are reflecting gender in their structures. So there is, the question of representation is broad. You could have seen when Suli was running up the stage, the uproar from the black people on the floor. We're watching very closely to say at least there is a body that represents me as a black person within the DA. So no matter how much that gets to be masked, it's a reality that they need to deal with. We didn't see, outside of Helen Zille's 72 years, top structure, no women. what are they doing about
Can
that?
I respond to this?
Yes, go ahead.
I think it's a
And then
very,
we'll take it to Cilliers.
she's made two points that I think need responding. One is on the government's aspect, because there is this argument that I think you're trying to make of differential service delivery. But I think if you look statistically in terms of the highest provision of basic services to vulnerable communities, when you look at what Cape Town has been able to achieve, it's because of its ability to collect rates, for instance, that it is able to provide the largest basket of free basic services, you know, to subsidize vulnerable residents. And where are those vulnerable residents? They are in this particular communities that you spoke about. And I think it's an important thing that when we reflect about this, we should go just beyond sound bites and sloganeering and look into the detail that go back with this. If you look in terms of every basic service delivery barometer and metrics that is done either by the Auditor General, the South African Local Government Association, even independent bodies, it shows the highest level of provision of basic services from water, sanitation, lights and toilet. You'll find those in Cape in the city of Cape Town and in the Western Cape provincial government. Is that enough? Yes, there is a need to improve enhancing access in those communities so that we aim for 100%, because in this day and age, every community in the country should have access to those basic services. And secondly, to come back to the demographic composition of leadership. I mean, there's this underlying inference that's been made that only black people can lead certain political parties in order to succeed in society. If that was the case, the EFF, which has had a black leader, has not been able to grow beyond being a more than double-digit political party. The SADP, which has been led by a black man, has not been able to even get closer to over 25%. And the point that I want to talk to, which I think it's fair that when we look at everything, at something, we look at it in totality. The leadership of the DA in Parliament, it is dominated by competent women. The Chief Whip of the DA, the first official black woman to be the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance, is Siviwe Gwahube. The chairperson of the DA caucus, the Deputy Chief Whip of the DA, is a white woman. And I hate getting into this into this terrain of having to name drop. But I think sometimes there is a very simplistic prism that tends to look at things in a very short element. Let's look at the leadership in its totality. And finally, I think it's all fair that we respond to this. South Africans care about whether they feel safe in their communities, their streets are clean, their water is running. They don't care whether the waste remover looks pink, looks purple, or looks green.
Service delivery
because
down.
It does. It's an important comment. But what we're saying is that what restores the dignity of people in communities is the sense that they get that they're feeling safe, that they have aspirations that can be met through a government that has empathy and delivers in their communities.
All right, Solly, thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. Cilliers, I wanted to get to you, but you can take it up with Solly after the show. He's taken your time. But thank you very much indeed. Value added, as always, digital audience. Doctor, appreciate your time. All right, before we go, here's my take. Has opposition become a position, or do you see their position, their offerings, as a viable, credible path to a better future? It's something that you'll have to grapple with as you prepare to exercise the franchise next year. For me, politics shouldn't be about digging in your heels at all costs, because change doesn't equal weakness. Put the people first, because posturing for power tends to expose perfidy, right? It's tough to capture the imagination of a forever changing electorate. It's something that we've witnessed here at It's Topical as we celebrate 1 year on air. Every week we hear your concerns, but we also provide a platform to discuss solutions, because this is your program, a program that brings people with the answers to those who need the answers. It's a mandate that is well understood from our show editor, our producers, our technical team, right down to little old me. And look, you and your family will continue to be our focus for another year. And we don't take that for granted. After all, you're topical. If you miss anything, be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on our YouTube channel. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.